At first, the launch looked perfect. Space Shuttle Challenger cleared the tower and climbed into a bright Florida sky. Then, just 73 seconds after liftoff, Challenger broke apart high above the Atlantic coast. 7 people were aboard. One was a teacher, Krista McAuliffe. She was meant to teach 2 lessons from space, and students were watching the launch live. But Krista would never teach those lessons. All 7 people aboard Challenger were killed. And yet, the first warning appeared less than 1 second after ignition: dark smoke from the right booster. The night before, engineers had recommended that Challenger should not launch in that cold. To understand how that warning was lost, go back to the morning of January 28, 1986. Challenger was starting a 6-day mission called STS-51L. Commander Dick Scobie and pilot Michael Smith sat on the flight deck with mission specialists Judith Resnick, Ronald McNair, and Ellison Onizuka. Payload specialist Gregory Jarvis and Krista McAuliffe completed the 7-person crew. Each of them had trained for a mission that was supposed to reach orbit that morning. They were due to deploy a satellite, observe Halley's Comet, and run experiments. On the 6th day, Krista would turn the shuttle into a classroom. Everything aboard had been planned around those 6 days. Challenger and its crew would have just 73 seconds. Challenger stood between 2 white solid rocket boosters and a large orange fuel tank. The boosters provided the hard first push away from Earth. Each booster was too long to build and transport as one tube, so it arrived in separate steel segments. Workers joined those sections together at the launch site, and every join had to contain the full force inside. One of those joins sat low on Challenger's right booster. The report called it the aft field joint. Inside it were 2 rubber rings. Those rings were called O-rings. Their job was simple: squeeze against the metal and stop burning gas from escaping through the joint. If the first ring leaked, the second was meant to back it up. But when the booster ignited, the pressure inside pushed hard enough to change the joint shape. For a fraction of a second, the gap beside the rings opened wider. A warm rubber ring could spring outward and follow that movement. A cold ring reacted more slowly, leaving hot gas a path towards the gap. Commission tests later made the difference plain. At 75 degrees Fahrenheit, the rubber returned to shape 5 times faster than it did at 30 degrees. In this joint, a fraction of a second was the whole safety margin. On Challenger's launch morning, the air was 36 degrees Fahrenheit. That was 15 degrees colder than any previous shuttle launch. The joint itself was colder still. Its coldest point was estimated at about 28 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to slow the rubber when speed mattered most. So, at ignition, the steel moved first and the rubber followed late. The primary seal did not close the root before hot gas reached it. Just 0.678 seconds after ignition, smoke escaped from that joint. Challenger had begun leaking before it cleared the tower. The troubling part was that the booster joint had warned the program before. Because the boosters were recovered after flight, engineers could inspect the seals. Earlier, hardware came back carrying damage around the same rings. Some rings had been eaten away by heat. In other joints, soot had traveled past the first seal. Engineers called that blow-by. 1 year before Challenger, Mission 51C launched at 53 degrees Fahrenheit. Its seals showed the strongest cold weather warning the program had yet seen. But the booster had not broken apart on those earlier flights, so every successful landing made the damage easier to accept as a condition the program could manage. That logic ran backwards. A flight surviving O-ring damage did not prove the joint was safe. It proved the joint had come back damaged. The commission later found that NASA and Thiokol had not joined all the flight data into the trend that mattered. Colder launches brought greater seal trouble. The warning existed, but it had never become a firm launch rule. Then the forecast for Challenger fell far below 53 degrees Fahrenheit. This time, the engineers closest to the joint tried to draw a line. On the evening before launch, Thiokol engineer Robert Ebeling gathered colleagues including Roger Boisjoli. They prepared charts showing why cold made the seals slower. Their written recommendation was clear. Do not launch if the O-rings would be colder than the coldest previous flight, 53 degrees Fahrenheit. "53 degrees was not a proven safe limit. It was simply the edge of their flight experience. Below that point, there was no shuttle launch data to show how the seals would behave. Challenger's joint was expected to be much colder." At about 8:45 that night, Thiokol, NASA's Marshall Center and Kennedy Space Center joined a telephone conference. The charts and the no-launch recommendation were presented. Marshall managers challenged the evidence. The discussion began to treat the contractor as if it had to prove the launch was unsafe rather than prove it was safe. Thiokol paused the call for what was meant to be a 5-minute private discussion. The off-net meeting lasted about half an hour. Inside that meeting, Boisjoli and Arnold Thompson kept arguing against launch. The commission's timeline records no engineer or other non-manager arguing in favor. Then Senior Vice President Gerald Mason turned to Engineering Vice President Robert Lund. He asked Lund to take off his engineering hat and put on his management hat. Management reviewed the decision without the engineers. At about 11 p.m., Thiokol returned to the call and recommended launch. In less than 2 hours, do not launch below 53 degrees Fahrenheit had become a written approval to launch far below it. The senior NASA managers responsible for the final decision never received the full dispute. No safety representative joined the call or the team making key countdown decisions. The normal checks had not carried the warning upwards. The next morning, ice still clung to parts of the launch structure. At 11:38 a.m. Eastern, Challenger's engines fired and the countdown reached 0.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff.
As pressure built inside the right booster, the joint opened and the cold rings failed to follow it. Smoke began pulsing from the gap 3 times each second. After 2.5 seconds, the smoke disappeared. Combustion debris may have blocked the damaged joint for a while, creating a fragile temporary seal. That is why Challenger appeared healthy as it climbed. The seal had not recovered. The leak had only become hidden again. At about 58 seconds, the temporary barrier gave way. A bright flame appeared from the same joint on the right booster. The flame grew and struck the hardware linking the booster to the orange external tank. Burning gas now attacked the structure holding the vehicle together. Seconds later, the tank failed, and the vehicle twisted apart under forces it was never designed to survive. The mission ended at 73 seconds. The Rogers Commission traced the loss back through the flame, the smoke, and the cold rubber to one joint, but it did not stop with the hardware. The report also found a launch process that had reversed engineering advice, kept senior decision-makers partly blind, and left safety staff outside the room. Before another shuttle could fly, the booster joint was rebuilt. A capture feature limited its movement, and a third O-ring added another seal. Then the redesigned motor was tested hard, 76 subscale tests, 14 assembly tests, and 5 full-duration firings before return to flight. NASA also created an independent safety office reporting to the administrator. 32 months after Challenger, Discovery carried the shuttle back into space. Challenger showed that a warning can be technically correct and still fail to reach the decision. Subscribe to Built on Warnings. Next, we follow the damage seen on Columbia at launch and why that warning was also allowed to fade.